Great. So I'm probably not going to change your life or totally transform your selling in 20. I think we've got to get in here by 3. Is that right?
Yeah. 8 o'clock for the high stake. Yeah.
Right. We got about 25 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
And here's the agenda. So I want to talk about what does it mean to sell as a servant leader. What are the what are the pitfalls? What are the most common mistakes I see people making as they think I want to sell as a servant leader. Maybe I just want to go out and serve people. And then what are some answers to those mistakes, those problems that I see people fall into? And if I can just give you one thing that helps you do a little better or makes you think differently, then that's the goal today. And so I'll ask you at the end, I'm going to ask you a couple of things. I'll ask you to get your business card and write on the back of that business card a few letters. I'm not going to ask you to buy anything today, but I will ask you to make a decision. And so there's your first lesson. Always ask people to make a decision. And that decision might simply be, hey, would you like to be on my email newsletter list? Or should we have a conversation about how I work with business owners to help them sell more and sell more easily? So get out your business card, write MINT on the back of it, and I'll tell you what those mean at the end. Again, no big deal. You don't have to circle anything, and I won't. And if you don't circle anything on the back, any of those letters, I won't call you or hound you or chase you down. So let's talk about what does it mean to sell. Let's first off, how many game shows have been based on the secret word, right? And there's a word that you have to get me to say, and I don't know what that word is. Let's pretend that the word behind me or the word on the TV screen is salesperson. Now, not you, but what is the average person out there going to say to get me to say that word? Come on, we got to go fast. The clock is ticking. What words is the average person going to say to get me to say the word salesperson?
Lowest rung on life's ladder.
Oh, wow. What else?
Used cars.
Used cars.
Bottom feeder.
Bottom feeder. Nice. What else?
Nice.
Yikes. Kevin's had a hard life. Okay, right? I mean, sometimes I put it, if anybody's old enough, I put up a picture from WKRP in Cincinnati. Who was that sales guy?
Oh, yeah.
Was it Les?
Les.
I could never remember. What
I like the helicopter reporter.
I was thinking Les was the
Les
was the news guy.
Yeah, he was the news guy, yeah.
What was that? I think the sales guy was Herb. And he
Herb.
Polyester suit. Right. Okay, so did any of you, did my mom put me to bed at night saying, by the way, there was one point in my life where I wish I always was one of those guys who knew that what they always wanted to do. Like some people just always know they want to be a doctor. And I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? And my mother said, what are you talking about? You always wanted to be a salesperson. And that's where I was, right? So, but did my mom kiss me at night? And my dad put me to tuck me in and say my prayers. And then did he say, I want you to grow up to be a sleazy, bottom feeder, pushy sales guy who's trying to take advantage of people, manipulate? Did he say that? No. Why are you, if you have a business that you've started, if you are in a role where you're not a salesperson, but you have to persuade someone to take some action, why would you want to persuade them? Why do you sell? Why did you start your business?
Because you had a service or a product that somebody else needs.
Okay, you had something that someone else needs. You want to help people. Why else?
Money.
Okay, you got to make some money, right? That's true. So that is there, and that's what people are afraid of, right? They're afraid that you're the sales vulture up on the telephone going to swoop down and get their wallet, or you're going to waste their time, or that they have something to lose, right? And so, and by the way, everything in media perpetuates all those negative things, right? Any movie that has salespeople, they're terrible people, right? But is that how the average, if you think about the people you know who are salespeople or who are business owners or who are not either of those things, but they have to persuade people to take action so that the world moves around, so that for their own good, it's because they believe that what they have is of benefit to the other person. It's because they want to serve. It's because they've seen how it's helped other people, right? It's not any of those things in the media generally, right? There are bad salespeople out there, but not most of them aren't, right? And so, but even the good salespeople, even when you have a friend, you go to church with them, you still know that they maybe have a vested interest. They have a money motivation, and so maybe you're a little guarded about that. So here's the pitfall. Here are the pitfalls. So what does it mean to sell as a servant leader? Let's just think about that though. Let's put ourselves in our shoes. What does it mean if we are going to sell? What does it mean to be a servant leader?
Give before they buy.
Okay, it might mean give before they buy. What else might it mean?
Help them understand their needs better than they might already. Help them ask the questions they don't know they should be asking.
Okay, so we have to ask great questions because sometimes they don't even really know what the issues are, right? Sometimes they may know a lot. They may have done tons of research on the internet or whatever, and yet they still might not be asking the right questions. Yeah? And you know, when we go to the marriage counselor, or we go to the psychiatrist or the therapist or whatever. I mean, when I went to the marriage counselor, really there was just one thing. I mean, it was that if he could just fix my wife and help her see then we could have this all straight, right?
Yeah, how'd that work for you?
But usually, you know, I mean, like, right, it's always the other people's problem, or it's the rest of the world. But the truth is that when we go, we know that we don't, if we agreed to go, even if it was because somebody, you know, wanted us to, that we are aware probably that we don't know really all the answers, right? And it's the counselor's job to help us figure out what the real issues are, and the real issues are probably not the ones we came with, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so as a salesperson, that's part of our role too, is we have to take that lead to help them figure it out. What else might it mean as a servant, to sell as a servant leader?
Customer first.
Customer first. So we really have to make sure that we're thinking about, you know, people have asked me sometimes, you sit on the airplane and, you know, what do you do? And I say salesperson, and they say, well, what makes a great salesperson? I've had more than one stranger ask me that question just as a point of conversation. And I think, you know, one of the most common answers I got was that I really care about people. And I really want to do what's best for them. And people know that. They can, you know, by whatever means, I've been able, through my history, to establish that trust quickly. And an example of that might be, so the longest time I sold for a huge company, I sold library books to schools. And if you think of any new school that opened in the last 25 years in Central Ohio, I probably was the salesperson for the whole library. But if there was a small, you know, Christian school, who I love to help, who, you know, they got together 20 or 30,000, which was really not very much money at all, to start a library, because they didn't have a library before, and we want to start a library. Lewis, how should we do this? I mean, you've opened more new school libraries than anybody, you know, and so I got the privilege of guiding them through. It might mean that I told them you shouldn't spend that whole 30,000 with me, because have you thought about shelving? I mean, you've got a few shelves here, but we can't fit $30,000 worth of books on these shelves. So we're going to have to set some money aside. And by the way, here's a guy who will help you design the library and sell you shelving. And I trust him. And you know, and so he'll tell you what we need to set aside for shelving. And by the way, if you're going to spend that much on books, we might as well go ahead and barcode them and get you a system to manage it better rather than just the old way of the pocket and the card in the back. That's going to cost you another few thousand. Now we're down to, you know, maybe my order's going to only be 20,000. But what's the result of that? Trust, right? And what's the result of that long term? Is she ever buying books from anybody else? No, right? Because I established right up front that I wasn't only acting in my best interest. Was it in my best interest in the short term to tell her to go see the furniture guy and to set aside some money for, not really. I mean, right, I could make more commission right up front if I just got the whole 30. And I could have done that. And then she would have been saying, where are we going to put these books? And maybe the library wouldn't get used quite as much if they weren't managing it as well. They didn't have one of those systems so the teachers could find what was in the library better. You know, but if they could find it, they could use it more, I knew I'd sell more books on the back end. So, okay, so let's talk about pitfalls. What are the most common things that I see come out of this that cause problems? Well, one is that as we say, I just want to serve people. I just want to, I want to serve first and then sell. The pitfall of that could be Well, let's just think about how the typical selling interaction works, right? You go out, you try to find some interest, find somebody that's interested in what you're doing. You might, by the way, talk a lot about how you've helped other people. And when you meet someone at one of these networking events and you ask them what they do, and then for the next 10 minutes they talk about how they've helped other people, how do you react to that? Sometimes you think, boy, I wish I hadn't asked, right? And how can I get away, right? So sometimes that excitement about how we've helped people works against us. But let's think about, how does the prospect go about the buying process? Well, oftentimes they are, because of that dynamic that we mentioned earlier, right? They are playing defense. They're afraid. They are maybe even telling you that sounds really interesting. I'll definitely like to come to your workshop, if they're talking to me. And then when I call them to follow up or I send the email, do they reply? Well, a lot of times they don't, right? If I'm cold calling, I never meet so many happy people as when I'm cold calling. They've got all the sales they can handle, right? But is that always true? Sometimes that's just a form of go away. I'm not interested. So a lot of times they are misleading right up front because they're playing their cards close to their vest. They're afraid. Right? They're afraid that you're that sales vulture. They're afraid that you're going to maybe even just waste their time. Or maybe you've been talking so much about how you've helped other people, they're just stepping back because that's too much. Now, what's their next step? A lot of times, if they are interested, they want what you want to buy, they're going to now try to get all the information they can, right? But do they want to commit anything? No, they don't, right? So a lot of times we call this the unpaid consulting step.
Right, exactly.
Now, I make my living as a consultant. How does that work out for unpaid consultants?
Not long term.
Skinny children. Skinny children.
Nice.
Right. So, and I got 6 of them. And they're not skinny. So, I'm at grandparent stage and she ain't skinny either. But we're having fun. So, here's the thing. There's a place for giving value early on, but in general, sell first and serve second because you can serve a lot more people if they're paying you to serve them. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not a place to serve, but you've got to figure out what does that mean, okay? Does that mean that does that mean that here's the problem. At this point in the interaction, most salespeople take a subservient role. See, servant does not equate to subservient. Who's typically leading the buyer-seller interaction? When they say, okay, give me some information, it's typically what I call puppy dog selling. How easy is it to get a typical salesperson to do unpaid consulting? Easy. Smile at them and say, I'm interested. I definitely need that. Why don't you put together a proposal? And we say, okay, I'll go get a proposal. And then they say, well, I'm going to need some time to think about it. And they say, okay, I'll go over here and sit while you think about it. Call me in 2 weeks. Sure, I'll call in 2 weeks. What's going to change in 2 weeks? Probably nothing, right? And it's always 2 weeks. Why is it always 2 weeks? Or it's 2 months. Or what changes? Okay, so there's the first thing. We've talked about 2 things already. One is that people are so excited about what they have to offer and how they've helped other people that you talk too much. And you're talking instead of listening. You're talking instead of asking. Because let's think about the doctor. Okay? Do you want a doctor that sounds like a salesperson? Okay? But I want to reverse that. I want you to sell like a doctor. When you go to the doctor's office, what happens? You got to fill out those forms, or it's 47 pages on the iPad now. And then you get in the office, and what happens? The nurse comes in and says, so what does she do? Asks you some questions, right? And now Wade and the doctor comes in, and what's he do? He says, your knee hurts? Hey, that's terrific. I've got 3 degrees on knees. I'm the best knee guy in town. I've helped so many people with their knees, and their knees don't hurt anymore, and my knives are very sharp. In fact, we're having a sale on knees. If you get one, we'll fix your shoulder too.
Yeah, that never happened.
But you have to decide today, is that how the doctor does it? Right, what would you say? You would say, get me out of here, right? Malpractice. But what if he is the best doctor in town for knees, and his knives are very sharp, and he could get it done today? And he wants to buy that boat, so he's willing to give you a discount. Does that work out? It doesn't matter if all of it's true. It doesn't matter. Okay, because of the way he would be selling. And that's not how doctors do it, right? And that's not how we should do it. But isn't that how a lot of salespeople, isn't that maybe you've even heard yourself in that at some point? Because you were so excited and you knew you could help this person. In fact, you knew you could help them more than they knew they could help it. You couldn't understand why could they not see it? Why were they not taking action? And so you talk more. You try to convince them more. And what is Newton's law about every action has a
Reaction.
and as you step forward, what do? They step back. Okay, so there's a couple of pitfalls. Getting excited about how you can help people and talking too much. Number 2, taking a subservient role. Instead, we have to be leaders in the interaction. In fact, we're going to have to do a lot of hard things as leaders if we want to serve more people and serve them well. Okay, it might mean doing scary things like making cold calls to find more opportunities to serve people. If we really have good that we bring to the world, if we really can help people, we might have to get out of our comfort zone at a networking event or doing prospecting to actually get things done and find opportunities to serve people. Okay, so that's another thing. But I want to give you a couple of real practical ideas here of how you could, these are just, tactical things about how you can change your strategy in the way you talk with people, when you have these conversations, that you can go out and apply today to, Monday. Started to say tomorrow, but I'm a Presbyterian, so, that Sunday thing. Okay, so every now and then somebody comes up to me at church and says, I love that stuff you post on LinkedIn. And I'm feeling like, okay, what do I do now, right? Anybody see Chariots of Fire? Those were Presbyterians.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, so
Just got that.
detour, yeah.
Totally just got that.
What's that?
Nothing, go.
All right, I just got it. Okay. So I got the sale anyway when the guy said that. But we delayed it. I didn't make the sale there at church in the church hallway. I said, maybe we should go to lunch on Monday. Okay, so here's a couple of tactics. Number 1 is this pattern. This default interaction is that the prospect leads. And when they lead by fear and defensiveness. And so we have to have compassion for them and help them out of that. Okay? So somebody said deceit. Is that the word you said? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they'll do anything to not give a hint that they're interested.
but look, let me just say right now, it's not I want to say though, right, I mean, when they said they're not interested when they are, you go to the mattress store, you're going to buy a mattress tonight, the salesperson comes up to you immediately, and you say what?
I'm looking.
Right? I mean, I open the door at the car dealer, and by the time I've got the door halfway open, the guy is halfway to my car already, right?
Yeah.
And then one of the first questions real early on is, what's the budget? And I say, the insurance company gave me $12,378, and I want you to spend it all. Is that what I say? No, right? But it's not a moral issue, Kevin. It's a great point. There is. I called on this librarian on the phone. It was a referral from the lady at Worthington Christian. They bought all their books from me. She said, you should talk to Patty over in Dayton. I talked to Patty. Patty says, I spent all my money. And then I said, I got her to let me come see her anyway. And when I was done, an hour and a half later, I said, no, I know you spent all your budget. But, and I've already told her. I said, you'll have money next year. I know you spent all your budget. She said, oh, no, I tell all the salespeople that. I've still got all my money. Okay? But she was teaching Sunday school the next day. Okay? In every culture, every religion, it's okay to lie to salespeople. Still go to heaven. Don't get me
I think
wrong.
there's something in the Bible about it. There's a lot of sales in there.
Don't get me wrong, okay, we're Orthodox Presbyterians. I do know my Bible. These are just jokes. Okay, so here's the thing. It's not a moral issue. Okay? It's just the way the game happens because people are afraid. It's not a moral issue. It's a systems issue. Okay? This is it's a systems dysfunction. So your job is to be the leader and pull them out of that dysfunction. How are you going to interrupt that pattern? Your job is to have compassion on them, not to think, why did they tell me they're interested and then they won't call me back? I mean, okay, you know what? We all say that. Like, gosh, why are they being that way? I still say it myself. And yet, it's my job to figure out how to help them out of that. Okay, so how are you going to interrupt that? Well, if somebody says, well, Lewis, we're happy with what we're doing, but we're always open to new ideas. Why don't you share with me why why we should buy from you? Typical salesperson might then say, well, we've been in business for a long time. We've got X, Y, and Z advantages over who you're using now. And, we can save you money. We can got better quality, better, right? All these things, right? These are the typical great answers, right? Which is more credible, that one or the one I'm about to give you? Don't get it wrong, it's the second one. Okay? If I said, well, I don't know, depending on your current situation, your relationship with your current vendor, the challenges you're facing, if any, maybe you shouldn't buy from us. And, maybe you should stick with what you've got. How about I ask you a few quick questions and we can figure out if there's any reason at all for us to talk further. Which is more credible? Okay. Better question, where does the credibility come in on the second one? I'm going to play the script back to you again, and you raise your hand, or you point to it when you hear the credibility come in. Hey, Louise, depending on, I don't know, depending on the current situation you have and the challenges you face, the relationship that you have with your current vendor, maybe you should stay with it. Okay, why is that?
Gives them freedom.
Gives them freedom, okay.
You're taking the pressure off.
Taking the pressure off. What else? What did you say over here? It gives them the control to make the decision, okay. But they had the control before. Maybe it felt a little pressured if I'm just telling them all the reasons to buy, but they asked me to tell them the reasons to buy, so I'm not really pushing them to make a decision. Even in the previous one, a lot of times people say, well, it's different, but I could sell naked and it'd be different. It wouldn't help necessarily. People say it's honest. Okay, we're getting a little closer. Maybe I'm going to say it's disarmingly honest. Because why is it disarmingly honest? Because it's not in my best interest to tell you. Maybe you should stay with who you've got. I don't know if you should buy from me. Right? But neither does the doctor necessarily know if you should do that surgery right now until he asks a lot of questions, including how is it really impeding your living? Because the doctor said to me, okay, if it's not impeding your living, surgery will impede your living, so we should just hold off. If you can deal with the discomfort for a little longer, you should do that. Was that in his best interest? Did that help him get the new boat he wanted? No. But it was in my best interest to tell me that. So that's what we call a pattern interrupt. Because you're interrupting that pattern of their defensiveness. Now, there are all kinds of pattern interrupts, but that's one. It's what we call disarming honesty. Because you've disarmed their defensiveness by acknowledging the truth. Now, an important mindset thing here is that you have to believe it. It's not a sales move.
Yeah.
Do you really believe that everyone is not your prospect? Because I do meet people at these kinds of events and I say, well, who's your ideal prospect? And they say, anybody. Anybody could use what I have. No, that's not your ideal prospect. Okay? There are all kinds of reasons why someone may not be your prospect. And it could simply be that they don't believe that they need you, even if they do need you. If they don't believe it, if they can't come to the conclusion that there's some compelling reason for them to hire you, they are not your prospect. And there is no reason for you to keep talking at them. You could talk with them about other things. You can enjoy them and get to know them and maybe even serve them in some way, but if you choose to. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that if you pour value into them, it's going to change whether they necessarily believe that there's any reason to talk about what it is you have to sell. Okay, number 2 thing I'm going to share with you, strategy I'm going to share with you is something that we call upfront contracts. And upfront contracts at Sandler, by the way, Sandler is the world's largest training organization. We've been doing this 50 years, helping business owners and sales professionals have more success. And if I see somebody who tells me, I did Sandler for 2 years, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and if I ask them, well, what was the biggest takeaway for you? What was the biggest thing that helped you? The number one thing they would tell me is upfront contracts. So, what's an upfront contract? Well, an upfront contract is simply setting ground rules. It's simply having clarity of expectations for how the process will work at any stage in the game. And there are three big things. Okay? If you think of the Tao of selling, right? T-A-O. Time, agenda, and outcome. Okay? Not only when are we going to meet, but how long are we going to meet for? Maybe you went to the meeting and thinking that it's just that you were going to have a full-blown presentation and they thought it was just a meet and greet. Maybe it was the opposite. They're ready to buy and you didn't think it was that. Understand, have clarity about time. Have clarity about agenda. And it's always good to understand their agenda, what they're looking for first, and then you can adjust yours in many cases. What kind of questions do you expect them to ask? What kind of questions should they expect you to ask during this interaction? And the most important, if you do those two things, you'll be more professional than most salespeople, and you'll have a better experience, and people will like you more. But if you don't do that, but you might not sell anymore. So this last third one is the one that really changes people's game, and that is having a clear understanding and agreement. Remember, a contract is a two-way agreement. Agreement about what are we going to decide today? Time, agenda, outcome. So it could be, agenda could be my expectations, your expectations, my response. If you gave them some homework before the meeting and you had homework, whatever, okay? But time, agenda, and outcome. Outcome is the decision we're going to make today. So here's what it might sound like. Hey, Keniston, thanks for taking time to meet with me today. I think we agreed we'd meet an hour. Are we still good for an hour? Great. Okay. And by the way, this is a real sped up version, okay, because I'm running out of time. But Keniston, that's so good, an hour. Here's the way this typically works. You've probably got some questions for me about how I help business owners, why people are willing to spend so much money with us to help them. And how it works, but before we answer those questions, I really need to understand what the challenges you are facing, how big they are, what the potential change that we could make is, what difference could we make, and how much how big those issues are, and also we're going to need to talk about what would be reasonable to invest, what could you imagine putting in terms of time and money, and how you make that decision, and then. If it still makes sense, then we'll save some time at the end to talk about, now what we might find during that time is that there's nothing here. Somewhere along the way, if I figure out that I'm not the right resource for you, I'll tell you. That be okay with you? Great. And if you figure that out somewhere along the way, will you tell me that? Because a lot of people aren't comfortable telling me that. You seem like a nice person, you'd probably be too nice to tell me now. But would you just go ahead and tell me now? I'll only cry a few minutes out in the parking lot. You want But if on the other hand, neither of us find a reason to tell each other no, then we'll save some time at the end to define what a next step might be, and that might be that you give me your credit card and we do some assessments, or maybe you want to go ahead and jump in with both feet and we set up a training arrangement and we do some training. But that's the decision we might. Let's decide that we'll either decide there's nothing here, or we'll make some sort of decision to take a step forward, or and we'll define what that step is. Fair enough? Okay, so that is a simple upfront agreement, and it's a game changer. When you set those expectations up front, there's no fear about what's coming. I told you I would ask you for a decision at the end, so I think I said I'd write on the back of your business card, MINT. M means, hey, we should have a meeting. Or you should give me a call, and we'll probably start with a phone call. Give me a call, Louis, and I want to know more about how you work with business owners or salespeople. I know somebody I could introduce you to. It doesn't make sense for me. I'm not interested, but I know somebody who really you should talk with them, and they should talk with you. N means I'd like to be on the newsletter list. I send out an email newsletter once a week, do summary of our blog articles, those kinds of things. And T is I'm a member of some other organization that looks for speakers where you might do a talk, Louis. And I could connect you with the person that arranges for those talks. So if you got a business card and you circle one of those things, I'll follow up with you. Unless it's the N, I won't follow up with you. I'll just put you on my email list. And if you don't circle, any of those things, but maybe you'd like to, well, I guess there's no reason to give me your business card in this case. But that'd be my call to action at the end is, give me your business card, circle one of those things. I'd be happy to, if you get on the email newsletter, that's the easiest one to circle, and you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe. So, I don't know, we have a couple minutes just to hear what anybody's thoughts, takeaways. What's one thing you heard here that maybe sparked a different thought? It was a new way of thinking, or maybe something that you could see. I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to apply that and do it differently.
This is, when I first got into sales,
Yeah.
one of the problems I ran into is that I would have clients who would want to meet with me and meet with me and meet with me, and they never made decisions. And I finally realized it kind of all boiled down to the fact that they didn't have money. They might need what I wanted, they might want what I wanted, they might
Yeah.
wish they could afford it, but they couldn't.
Yeah.
And so in my initial meeting, and this is tricky because, it's different in every business, I had to work out whether they really could afford what
Yeah. So
service or product.
for some
I
people,
had
it's
to
more
sell.
important to qualify about money earlier in the process. Dave Fox Remodeling was one of my clients. They sell $50,000 and $100,000 kitchens.
Mhm.
They have to talk about money very early. But here's the three things that we say you have to uncover as quickly as possible. It's what we call pain, budget, and decision. Now, pain means why would they care? Budget means not just money but time. Are they willing, or energy, or are they willing to change? And decision would be how are they going to make the decision? Who's going to make the decision? When are they going to make the decision? That kind of thing. So those are the qualifying. That's the qualifying process we teach is pain, budget, and decision. And that decision doesn't mean asking for a decision. It means how are they going to make it? Anybody else? What's a takeaway for you?
I have a question though.
Yes.
Kind of a takeaway, but also just to clarify this. So this upfront contract,
Yeah.
this upfront arrangement you talk about, so that's going into the prospect conversation, the sales conversation, and letting them know what to expect right from the get-go. Like, here's how this is going to play out. Here's
Yep.
what I will do. Here's
You're
what I
going to
need
take the
do.
lead, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable at first for you to learn to do this, but it actually makes people feel more comfortable. You're going to find it makes people feel more comfortable because they know now what to expect.
Mhm.
They know what decision you're going to ask them for. And by the way, every world is not a one-call close, right? The decision you're going to ask for may be, should we have another meeting? It may be, is there some intermediate step we're going to take? But it's the first, in the first 10 seconds of a 3-minute cold call, and then it's the last 30 seconds of that cold call. If you're setting the appointment, you're going to set the expectations for the meeting. And then when you get in the meeting, it's the first few minutes. It might, within the first 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, you want to know what the last 5 or 10 or 15 minutes are going to look like. It's the very beginning of the meeting to set the agenda and the ground rules. Anybody else? Maybe one more.
I just want to make sure I understand this mint concept.
Yes.
Is that for me
I'm.
to use? Like,
You could
how
use
is
that, yes.
it
People
for-
love it. They say, I'm going to, there's always somebody in the room that says, I'm going to use that. But really, it was for you to give me your business card. I'm inviting you to invite me to talk. I mean, I'm inviting you to indicate to me if we should talk more, or if you'd like to get my email, or somewhere I can talk, or someone you can introduce me to. And so I'm giving you a means of telling me that, of making a decision.
What's the T stand for?
Talk.
Talk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Somewhere that you're a member of an organization where I might do a talk.
Yeah, got it.
Where's
You know-
the B for breakfast burrito in there?
Yeah, that's good. Worm's burrito's great. Hey, that reminds me of one other thing that I wanted to say at the very beginning, which is today is Worm's Food Drive.
Yeah.
So if you don't live in Westerville and you didn't get a Kroger bag on your doorstep, they at a number of the schools, Warm is collecting food today, but their office is actually at Heatherdown, right across. If you come out of here towards State Street and you go across, that's where their office is, and they'll be collecting food till noon if you want to stop to Kroger and take them stuff. Some of the things they need most are things like even just toilet paper, but canned goods like tomato sauce and tomato paste. And
It's a great organization.
yeah, so I wanted to mention that. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope you found some value. If you want to talk more later, be sure to, give me your business card or just come see me. I'll hang around for a little bit afterwards.
Great.